Hey everyone, today I want to talk about pain, and specifically ways we can curb pain. Nobody likes pain, and when you have pain you typically go to the doctor, and one of the first things they will prescribe to you are NSAID drugs. Now if you're not familiar with NSAID drugs, these are your typical Advils, naproxen, Celebrex, meloxicam. These are some of the most popular ones. But what they are is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And if you've taken one, it doesn't necessarily mean you've taken them all. They all act a little bit different, and some people might have better reactions to one versus another. And take it from me, I know because I've tried many of them. And I have many of my prescriptions right here in front of me right now. Now usually people start off with something like Advil. And it's typical, you can go buy it at your grocery store, it's easy access, you can take it, and you feel better. In the short term, it's often pain relief, but in rare situations, you can have vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, just to name a few. The negative sides of the long term include kidney failure, liver failure, ulcers, strokes, or possible heart attacks. Now, these are all pretty bad outcomes. And if you have a lot of pain, you might be having to take NSAID drugs for quite a long time. And currently, I'm kind of finding myself in that boat. I've been taking them for a couple years now. I have some experience with them, but I would like to figure out some other options out there. It's just that there's not that many. These drugs are highly prescribed, and they are one of the hardest on your body. So before you get into them for long term, you should know what you're getting yourself into. So here in front of me I have some of the ones that I've taken. So let's see here. We have naproxen. Now naproxen is a common one. You can go buy it at the grocery store. But if you go to the doctor, they will prescribe you stronger strength naproxen. Now I find naproxen is good for arthritis. And it works for some other stuff as well. But arthritis, naproxen is probably the go-to drug. Unfortunately for me, most of my problem is tendinitis, so I don't take naproxen anymore. One of the typical ones I go to is Celebrex. Now Celebrex I've had really good results from. You can take up to 200 milligrams a day, and it has a positive outcome for most people. It's highly prescribed, and I recommend you give Celebrex a shot if you have pain that you want to curb over the long term. You certainly don't want to take something like Advil every day. So if you have pain that you want to consistently push down, Celebrex is a good way to go. Now in my situation, when I take an NSAID drug, it doesn't continue to work for the long term. When I first take it, I'm like, oh great, this is working, I feel great, I'm real happy with the results. But then after a couple of months, I'm taking them and I'm like, is this even doing anything? I'm not even sure. So I found out the hard way that if you switch from one to another, sometimes that can have a positive outcome. So from Celebrex, I switched to meloxicam. Now meloxicam, when I first started taking it, I also thought it worked quite well. But unlike the Celebrex that worked good for a couple months, I thought meloxicam only worked good for about a month. When I was at the end of my first month cycle, I wasn't really sure if it was working or even doing anything. So I went to my doctor and I asked, you know, is there some other one you can prescribe me? I've tried Celebrex, I've tried meloxicam, perhaps there's another option out there. So that's when they prescribed me this one, and this is, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this right, but this is, I think, menumetone. Anyways, this is a 750 milligram tablet, and nebumentone, if I'm saying it right, didn't have a very good effect for me. I didn't really like it. It didn't really curb my pain, so I went to the doctor and I said, okay, this stuff, not my cup of tea. What else could you recommend? And that's when they prescribed me Solendac. Now, Solendac is probably the favorite NSAID drug that I've taken, and most people probably have never even heard of it because it's very uncommon. But the doctor said, let's go ahead and give Solendac a try, and I said, okay, that's fine. Now, the thing that I really like about the Solondac is that you can take up to 400 milligrams a day, but I got a dose of 150 milligram tabs, and I'm supposed to take them twice a day. So I only ended up taking one Solondac in the morning, and I felt like that was all I needed. So I am taking below half of what the recommended max dosage is. Whereas with the Celebrex, I was taking the max dosage. So taking less than half of the Solondac max dosage felt about the same as taking the maximum dosage of Celebrex. So Solondac, one that I really liked, and it worked for several months before it really started to fade away. But after it did fade away, I went to the doctor and said, okay, I've tried all these other ones. What else do you have for me? Is there something else you can try? And this is when I tried the Edobolic. They recommend Edobolic, so I said, okay, let me go ahead and give this a try. Now, the Edobolic was definitely the worst one of every NSAID drug that I have taken. I started to feel dizzy when I was taking it. You know, these side effects, you know, when you read them, you don't really think, okay, you know, I'm not going to feel any of these. I'm not going to be in this boat. But with the Edodolic, I was definitely dizzy. And I didn't really connect the dots right away. I just kind of gradually started getting dizzier and dizzier as the days went on. And it really came to a head when I was at the gym and I got out of the hot tub and suddenly everything became black and I tried to maintain my composure, but I fell down, basically passed out. Even though I technically don't think I ever lost consciousness, everything just turned black and I couldn't move. And it was pretty scary. The ambulance came, people came over to help me, no one knew what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. After about 10 minutes, I was able to sit up. The paramedics took my blood pressure. They said, you know, I was just barely below the level that was dangerous. So I eventually connected the dots that it was the Edodolic that kind of spurred the situation. I started to feel the symptoms right about the time I started to take this. So I cut this out and soon after that things returned to normal. So it's definitely worthwhile to try different NSAID drugs, see which ones work for you. But over the long term, it's not a sustainable strategy. So short term, it'll work. Long term, you need to figure something else out, because even though they feel good right now, you know, when you're old, you don't want to have a heart attack or stroke or get yourself in a real bad situation, because some small knee pain now could lead to something major down the road if you don't handle it properly. Alright, that's my advice for today, and I hope to see you on this channel soon.